if you're just joining, we haven't started. We actually just starting now. Thank you for taking the time and joining. Like I said, my name is Gideon Ogongo. You guys may have already noticed that we are quite behind on our training. I think today we were supposed to be on module 4. So I have a plan, don't stress. I have a plan to sort of catch up on all of these things. So what I've been doing is I've been doing a lot of recordings of the sessions. As soon as I produce them, I would share them with everyone, so we don't have to wait until the class actually starts before we can go through some of those recordings as well. And also you guys will be able to, before the training, sort of go through this recording before you get into the class as well. So Sharon, if you can maybe assist in admitting, oh, thank you. I see you've already done that. Appreciate it very much. So, so for the module 2, for the Azure Functions, I know the last time we didn't finish, there were some labs and exercises. I've actually done the recording. I will produce them today, and hopefully tomorrow you get the chance to be able to use them and go through them. And I also know that I noticed a lot of you have had session with Clinton. You've activated your Azure account. If you haven't activated your Azure account, please feel free to let us know. I think this is super important. Without Azure account, you will not be able to perform some of the exercises and the training effectively. Now, I'm going to keep reminding you this. Just remember to go to the github.com/learning, Microsoft Learning, and look for AZ204 there. You will find all the labs and the exercises. I didn't want to do the labs and the exercises online while we're in session, so hence I'm putting them all in a video sessions that I'm going to be sharing with you guys as well. I would try to do as much demonstrations as I can, which is not going to take time, but all your labs and exercises will be recorded and I'll share with you guys later on as well. So Azure Functions, we're not finished yet. So what I want to do is get module 3 out of the way. If we are able to get module 3 out of the way as quickly as possible and we have a little bit of time, I'll go back to the Azure Functions and I will conclude on the durable functions, and then also conclude on the demonstrations for the Azure function as well. Otherwise, let's just go through module 3. Module 3 is slightly simpler, easier to go through, doesn't require a lot of development, and then we'll come back to the Azure functions later and just play catch up. So technically today we're supposed to have done, we're supposed to conclude on module 4. And I'm going to talk to you guys about this after the session. If you're willing to attend another session tomorrow, I know we don't have any session planned for tomorrow. I am actually willing to just slot you guys in the morning and have a session, and then we can go through module 4 as well. And then come back Wednesday, we would have sort of caught up on everything as well. And then we'll just sort of see how we can push as quickly as possible. This module does have a lot of content in it. All right, without any more further ado, I'm going to get started. So if you're a software developer and you build applications for a company, one of the most critical elements of your application is storage. And in the on-premises or in the physical non-cloud infrastructure, this is not an issue, because if you build a web application, that web applications will need to be hosted on a machine. That machine would have storage, and every single storage requirement by your applications will be utilized, would basically utilize the machine as well. The case is the same if you are managing your platform or your solutions on a virtual machine. Virtual machines do come with a storage that is used, and this storage can be essentially used to be able to store your applications. But because we're doing an Azure training, well, we are not hosting our applications or storing our applications on a machine that is sitting behind a server room somewhere. It's actually sitting in the cloud. The requirement for storage is slightly different. So there are two types of storage that is provided in the cloud. The one is basically called a managed disk. So managed disk, when you create a virtual machines in the cloud, the virtual machine is automatically attached with a managed disk. And this managed disk, they are slightly more expensive than the storage that we're going to be talking about today, but they are specifically used for storing virtual machines, for running applications, and so on and so forth. But, well, that's not the concept of module 3. Module 3 is about a storage account and a storage solution, solutions called Blob Storage. So the word Blob stands for Binary Large Object. Binary Large Object Blob is usually used to describe any type of storage that can store images, that can store videos, that can store audios, that can store documents. So the best way to sort of describe all of these different types of storage requirement is by using the binary large object. So today we're going to be looking at how to develop solutions using the binary large object. So we have three agenda in this module. The first one is to explore the Azure Blob Storage and the things that you can do with it. And so here we get to talk about all of the capability and all of the things that you can actually do with your Azure Blob Storage. Sharon, I'm not sure if you're here. I don't want to have to go back and forth at meeting people. If you're here, please help admit new people when they're coming. Thank you very much. Okay, so we have three objectives in this module. So at the end of this module, the agenda is that you would understand what Azure Blob Storage is. You would know what their capabilities are. You would know how to create them. The second will be how to manage the Azure Blob Storage lifecycle from creations to the end of life. And then we would also look in the third module how to work with Azure Blob Storage and the things that we can do with it as well. Okay, so in the first topic, we have a few things here. After completing this module, you'll be able to identify the different types of storage account and the resource hierarchy for your blob storage. So in Microsoft Azure, when you create a storage account, there are several options available, and it's super critical to be able to know the difference between them as well. In that first topic, we will talk about it. Second, we will explain how data is securely stored and protected through redundancy in Microsoft Azure. And then lastly, we'll create a blob storage account by using Azure Cloud as well. So I will show you, today will be the first time I would show you some of the administrative tools that are non-browser based that you can essentially use to be able to manage your Azure resources, specifically in the storage area as well. All right, so whenever you think of a storage account in the Microsoft Azure, and specifically in the Blob Storage account, we are talking about a disk. Obviously, it's a persistent disk for Azure, infrastructure as a service, which means all your virtual machines. And then we also have the option of a premium storage options, which we're going to discuss later on as well. But the most important thing is that whenever you create a storage account, you have access to three different types of data: files, blob, tables, and queues. So for software development, massive auto-scaling, NoSQL storage, dynamic scaling based on load, tables are the options, and queues are reliable queues. Obviously, we spoke about what queues are. The scale for cloud services, the decoupled and scale component. They are used specifically for just moving messages from one application to another. So today, we have a dedicated module specifically for looking at tables and queues, but today specifically, we're just going to be dealing with files and blob storage. Well, I don't need to introduce you to files. So files are basically all the documents that you generate on a regular basis. It could be You know, it could be your documents, which are part of Microsoft Office applications. It could be your audio files. It could be your video files. So these are basically SMB files. And then obviously there's you can do some lift and shift with legacy applications. So most organizations that are moving their applications to the cloud, they are essentially moving their existing file server to be replaced by a storage account in the cloud as well. So if you've ever worked for a company and they created an account for you and you have this H drive that is usually mapped to your machine whenever you're logged in, and every files that you create and work on sort of gets saved on that H drive. Well, when you sign up to use Azure and you are moving all your resources to Microsoft Azure, you would have to perform what is called a lift and shift, which is essentially moving all your existing file servers on premises and moving them to the cloud as well. And the one option available for you is to use a storage account. So when you create a storage account, you basically have access to be able to store all your managed files, and you can also share them, but the difference will be that they are stored in the cloud. So basically, and also you would have access to the fact that this storage files have a REST API. So REST APIs are basically endpoints that allows you to programmatically connect to these files and retrieve the content of this file as well. So this is going to be one of the major differences between a storage account in the cloud and your on-premises, you know, file server that you have come to be accustomed to quite a lot as well. So REST API stands for Representational State Transfer. It's essentially a way to expose remote objects to applications that would like to consume them programmatically. So what this means is that you could build a website that has an upload button that you can click on the upload button, and you can specify the things that you want to upload, like images and video. And when you click the upload can actually go into the Microsoft Azure storage account, files, or blobs. So, and the way that you're able to achieve this is by using what is called the REST API. So these REST APIs are basically exposed. Obviously, there are some security implementation on top of the REST API, so you're not just opening up your entire files and documentations out on the internet. And then also for Blob, these are highly scalable REST-based cloud object store. It also has a concept of blobs as well, which basically is a way of sequentially accessing file in a highly optimized way. And it also has a page blobs, which is a random write pattern, which can also improve performances as well. So we'll talk more about each and every single one of these options. So, but in summary, the one thing that you need to know is that when you create a storage account in Microsoft Azure, you have the ability to use the files capability, the blobs capability, the tables capability, and the queues capability as well. And on top of all of this capability, you have some distributed storage capability that is built on top of it. So like durability, and we'll talk about the durability a little later on as well. Just to ensure that all your files and document and blobs and tables are always on. Microsoft has a few implementations that allows us to be able to ensure that our file is durable. Encryption at rest, which is a very, very strong requirement, especially when you're storing corporate data. So if someone were to hack into maybe, for example, someone were to steal some of the servers from the data center and dump the hard drive somewhere, and someone else grabs the hard drive, they will not be able to see the content because the content will be encrypted at rest. And then also it has a very strong consistent replication. So constantly files that you put in Azure in a particular region, it's automatically replicated to another region as well. So if there's a natural disaster in a particular location, it's like if, so for example, in South Africa, there's Microsoft Azure, and we have two regions. So the first region is the South region and the North region. And the North region is obviously in Johannesburg, and the South region is in Cape Town. And you can basically create a particular storage account and choose how you would like the storage account to be distributed and replicated. And this provides a lot of fault tolerance for your files, basically meaning also that if you lose an entire region, like if Johannesburg, there was an earthquake and the entire building where the data center goes under, you would still have a copy of your file located in another region as well. And it also has auto load balancing as well. And this is something that comes by default when you create a storage account. It just automatically ensures that depending on the number of people that are accessing it, a considerable amount of resources are allocated for it to be able to be performant as well. Okay, cool. So let's talk about, on the second slide here, let's talk about the different types of Azure Blob Storage. So if you, a little earlier on, I mentioned that you have different types of Azure Blob Storage. So there's the standard storage and there's the premium storage. So the standard storage is a general purpose storage, and it's usually called the standard general purpose V2. This is the storage account that basically has the blob, the queue, the tables, and the Azure files that we spoke about earlier. So when I refer to Azure storage account, I am literally referring to the standard storage account. However, when you are creating this Azure storage account, you do have the ability to specify a premium Azure storage account as well. So let's discuss quickly what this premium and what the standard is as well. So the first thing I just want to clarify is when we're talking about a blob storage, what are blob storage essentially designed for? Well, they're designed for serving images or document directly to your browser. Okay, so if you're building an e-commerce application and it has an extensive amount of images on them, like images of your products and so on, you can serve those images to your web applications or to your e-commerce applications in the browser when user browse them as well. And if you built a platform such as Instagram, for example, and it's heavily image driven, and you want to be able to upload images online and download images all from within the browser, you can do the same as well. So if it's a document that you want to be able to access locally or in the browser, you can also use the blob storage as well. First of all, it's also used for storing files for distributed access. So if I work in a large company and these companies have locations everywhere, and I want to be able to upload a file here, and I want one of our employees in China or in Japan or in Europe to be able to access it, well, Microsoft does have capability that allows some sort of CDN to ensure that the files will be locally available in that location as well. If you also want to do things like streaming videos and audio, so like if you're a radio station or if you're just a company that shares movies and or music, you can basically store them in Azure and then you can stream them from Azure as well. And one of the major things that Azure Blob Storage is used for is for log files. So transactions that are happening within Azure is usually stored in a log file, and you will see by default when you create a storage account, that storage account would automatically have a container for $log, and this is where transactions relating to it will be stored as well. You can also use it for storing data for backup and restore, disaster recovery, and archiving purposes, which means that you can actually just buy an Azure storage for archiving purposes only. And then you can use it for storing data for analysis by an on-premises or Azure hosted services as well. So if you're familiar with business intelligence strategy, for example, or business intelligence solutions, well, business intelligence solutions need to be able to analyze a massive amount of data, especially in the machine learning and in the data analytics aspects. So you can also use this particular storage for it as well. So, and like I mentioned, there are two tiers that is available. They're called performance tier. One is the standard tier, and then the other one is the premium tier as well. So let's just dive into it. So Azure Storage offers several types of storage account. Each type supports different features and has its own pricing model. And that's important because what I'm going to do next is I'm going to show you guys what is called an Azure Calculator. For some of you who have not used it before or who haven't heard of it before, you get an opportunity to see what an Azure resource is essentially going to cost you. So before I carry on, so if you want to see the Azure Calculator, you can simply just come in here and click on Azure Calculator. And then when you press the Enter key, you can just look for the first option here, which is Azure Calculator. I'm going to click on it. I'm not sure who is helping with. Okay. And so Microsoft created this Azure Calculator to allow any consumer or any customer to be able to come here and find out what a particular resource in Azure would cost them before they, before they can commit to the purchase. So this is a very, very essential tool because oftentimes when you are talking to customers and you're telling them about how great the Azure solution is, and you don't tell them what it would cost, it might come as a surprise when they eventually commit and they start using it and they get billed on the resources. So the Azure Calculator allows you to be able to sort of do an estimate, and that estimate will tell you what it would cost as well. You have these three tabs here. So the first one is the product. You can choose any of the Azure product. The second one is the example scenario. So if you want to do like CI/CD, continuous integrations, continuous deployment, that looks similar to the scenario, you can basically look at the estimates and it would automatically take into considerations all of the different services, like things like Azure Synapses, Data Lake, Synaptics Analytics. You can see all of these options, Power BI and web application and the Cosmos DB. You will be able to automatically see what that estimate is as well. So if you click Add to Estimate, so what it would do is it would take all of those resources and it would add them here. And you can see the Azure Synapses. It will show you which regions, and be aware the regions would basically determine the price as well. So you can switch from one region to another. And in a month is the amount of hours that you are going to incur. And this is basically the different block of the data warehousing solution. So if you choose the data warehousing unit at 500. You can read more about this here if you click on that option there. And you want this to be available 730 hours, which is for an entire month. It's going to cost you $7.55 per hour. And this is if you're using a pay as you go. So basically, you don't pay anything upfront. You just commit to the service. You put your bank account there, and then at the end of the month, you get a bill, and then you pay for it as well. However, if you commit to a one-year reserve account, which is called an Azure commit, you get a savings of 37%, which is pretty good. And if you commit to a 3-year Azure purchase, you get a saving of close to 65% as well. So meaning your contract will be for 3 years purposes, and you would basically be paying 65% less than what you would have paid as well. Okay, I don't want to use this scenario. I mean, if you are happy with the estimate, you do have the ability to save it as well and come back to it. But this scenario is a little bit too much. So if I come in here and I go to storage accounts, if I click on the storage account, you can see that the storage account has been added. Okay, and just close that. Oh, okay. All right, so if you click on the, actually want to just remove these estimates that I've done here, and also just give me a second there. I want to just use a different browser altogether. It's these pop-ups that are coming up. I'm not sure why they are. Okay, and whatever estimate that you create with Azure Calculator, you might want to save it by signing in as well, so that every time you sign and you come back, you'll be able to see, you'll be able to see all the things that you have done an estimate for. So I'm going to go back to products. I'm going to click on Azure Storage account because that's the module that we're doing right now. And it would tell you that the Azure Storage account has been added. You can essentially go to the Azure Storage account and you can see right here you have an estimate. It's an Azure Storage account. It's a Blob V2 account. So if you want to, you can delete that and add a new one, and you pay nothing upfront. And the monthly charge is essentially $21. Now, $21 will give you a capacity in this particular location, in this particular region. So let's say, for example, we change to South Africa. So if you come here, you can see in Africa, Azure only exists in South Africa only. So if you go to South Africa North, which is Johannesburg, you can see it's slightly more expensive. It's basically going to cost you $23 a month. And that is totally nothing because, I mean, that's not even 500 Rand a month for this very, very powerful storage as well. So you can see some of the things that we're going to discuss on this slide is the redundancy. This is basically how the storage is stored. It's also the tier as well. You have hot, cold, and archive. So this is for a heavily transactional application. And then obviously we're choosing this option as well. So if you just want Azure Files, you can see this is how much this is going to cost you if you want to be able to just stop files. And look at that. You get data at rest. You get 1 terabyte of data, snapshot 1 terabyte, and so on and so forth. And then if you want, you can then export this to Excel, and that's how much that's going to cost you a month as well. If you change this to Azure Blob Storage, you can see that that's going to cost you $23. And if you choose a redundancy of zone redundancy, this would essentially just go up a little bit as well. We'll talk about the redundancy. And the higher you go for the redundancy, the more this actually costs as well. Okay, so with this estimate, you need to be aware that, you know, I would talk about the difference between the standard and the premium. So with the standard, you pay for that storage and you pay a little bit of money for transactions as well. So uploading, reading, so you can see how much is being charged for 10,000 operations. You are being charged 0.0004 per transaction, per 10,000 transactions. I mean, that's totally nothing, right? So, and you can see all other operations is also going to cost you that amount as well. So that's like 1 cent basically. So if you want to do geo-replications, which we're not doing, it's going to cost you $29. But that's the options that we chose if we chose the locally redundant storage. And don't worry, I'll explain this on your slide. This is how much this is going to cost you a month as well. So the Azure storage is the Azure Calculator. It's actually a very important utility that you should learn how to use, because then you can see what the actual cost is going to be. So for 3 years, having access to Azure storage, you get to pay close to $15,000 monthly. That can't be monthly. This is a reservation for 3 years. All right, so let's go back to the slide and then we'll continue. But at least you have an idea. So let's talk about Azure Blob Storage types. So we spoke about, so after you've created the storage, you can essentially create what is called containers. So containers would be equivalent to what a folders will be. But let me just go back. There's a few things that I also want to just mention on a previous slide as well that I completely forgot about. So let's talk about these performance level. So like I mentioned, you have a general purpose V2 account. This is a basic storage account type for blob files, for queues and tables. And it's usually recommended for most scenario, okay, for Azure storage. The premium blob storage, basically it's blob only storage account. And it has premium performance characteristics. It's recommended for high transaction rates. So if you're going to be reading and writing to it very, very often and very quickly, and you need to be very, very performant, you can use the premium blob storage. This is going to cost you 50% more than your standard storage. However, this is for high transaction rates using smaller objects, and requiring consistently low storage latency as well. So that's the premium block blob. There's a premium page blob, which is basically for type of page blocks only. And we haven't spoken about page blob yet, but we won't. And then what you don't see here is that there's another version of the general purpose blob, which is it's called general purpose V1 account. It's a legacy account type for blob, files, queues, and tables. Uses. The recommendation is that you continue to use the V2. I don't even think the V1 is available when you are creating this anymore. And we also have a premium file storage account. This is for file only. These are basically not listed on this list, but these are premium files storage only. And they basically have the performance characteristics of a premium file, like I spoke about earlier, and they cost quite a significant amount more than the general purpose V storage as well. So let's talk about the access tier. So I mentioned earlier there are 3 access tiers available: the hot, cold, and the archive. So basically the hot access tier is optimized for frequent access of objects in the storage account, and accessing data in the hot tier is most cost effective, while storage costs are higher. New storage accounts are created in the hot tier by default. So what this means is that when you create a new storage account, that storage account is created by default in the hot tier. And this hot tier is for frequently accessed data. So every day you have users that have applications that are busy working and using that particular storage account. This will be the type of storage access tier that you would choose in this regard. But the cool access tier is optimized for storing large amounts of data that is infrequently accessed. So this is basically where you're just keeping information that you don't need access to on a day-to-day basis. And they store at least 30 days before access. So storing data in this cool tier is most cost effective, but accessing data may be more expensive than the hot tier. Obviously, it'll just be a lot slower. It'll take a while for you to be able to access on the cool tier. And the archive basically is available only for individual blob storage. And this is just optimized for data that can tolerate several hours of retrieval latency and remain in the archive tier for at least 180 days. So this is when you don't even want to use this information. You just want to keep it. And for example, invoices that are paid by an organization, there's a regulations that basically enforces you to keep those invoices for a minimum of 5 years before you can dispose them off. These type of informations are seldom accessed all the time. So usually this will be something that you would put in the archive tier as well. All right, also like I mentioned, so Azure Blob Storage allows you to be able to store different types of information, and this information is essentially categorized by what the word called container. This is different from your containers from Kubernetes. This is just containers that you create to help categorize your files. So for example, in the storage account, you can create a container for images, you can create a containers for videos. And basically the Azure Storage account allows you to be able to store data through its resources. The storage account contains the following component. This storage account refers to the account that you create that will give you access to the storage account. So meaning before you can do anything with the Azure Storage, you need to create an account as well. So in terms of hierarchy, it's the parent accounts of the container and blob resources, meaning this is basically going to be at the top of the list of the things that you create. Hence, your storage account will be your parent account. And as you can see in this hierarchical storage, the storage account represents the starting point as well. The container, on the other hand, refers to a collection of objects that are grouped together and are accessed by using the same based uniform resource locations. So this is basically, I mean, if I want to access all my images in the media, I would use the same URI. If I want to access on my video, I would have a URI for it as well. So these are basically addresses that allows you to be able to find those specific resources in that regard. All right, so blob refers to an object, typically a media file on a disk, stored in the container. So whenever you see here a blob, This could be anything. So it could be a video, it could be an audio, it could be an image, it could be a document. That's basically what you store in Azure. Let's talk about the capability that is available in Azure. So Azure Storage provides a comprehensive set of security capabilities. You can rely on Microsoft to ensure that this storage is secure, especially if you're going to be storing mission critical data on top of this storage. So the first option available is what is called RBAC. So RBAC is basically a subset of Azure AD. So Azure AD is Microsoft Azure Authentication Server. This is where all your account and users and authentications and access to resources is basically managed. And it basically uses a concept called role-based access controls. And role-based access control is just a bunch of roles that are given permissions that you can put users into, and then the users would automatically inherit all the permissions in that particular role for that access. So data can be secured in transit using TLS, transport layer security, or data can be secured at rest if the data is stored on the disk, just to ensure maximum security for your application. You can also have delegated access to data objects now. Storage can be granted using what is called a shared access signature. Dropbox and Google Storage does have it. I can create a folder on a Google Drive, and I can create some sort of shared access signature, and I can send it to a user and say, and that shared access object or signature would basically give that user access to that folder for an amount of time that I set in that particular shared access signature as well. You can do exactly the same thing with Microsoft Azure. You can storage account, you can create a container, and then in that container, you can create what is called SAS, which is essentially just a delegated access that you can give to someone who is not a member of your organization or who would normally not have access as well. So also Azure Storage provides encryptions for data at rest. We spoke about that as well. Azure Storage automatically encrypts the data that is stored in Azure. And this encryption is enabled for all new and existing storage accounts, and it cannot be disabled. So this is not something that you can turn off. And the Azure storage accounts are encrypted regardless of their performance. Doesn't matter if it's a standard or a premium deployment options. And encryption does not affect your Azure storage performance as well. So contrary to popular belief that every single time something is encrypted, reading and writing to it might basically take a little bit of time. It's not the case here. It doesn't affect the performance of your storage. So let's take a look and talk about some of the redundancy options. Now, this is something that you're going to find a lot on your exams. And this redundancy options allows you to be able to explain or to understand how Microsoft is ensuring redundancy on your storage. The first one we're going to talk about is what is called LRS, locally redundant storage. So for some of you who haven't done the Azure Fundamentals, one of the things that you're going to learn in the Azure Fundamentals is the concept of region. So Microsoft organized their data center into region. So regions are usually data centers that are within 300 miles. I think that's correct. That are within 300 miles. So if you put a data center in Joburg and in and around Joburg, all of those data centers will be in the same region. Obviously, they would have a high-speed connectivities between those regions. So you could have one in Pretoria, one in Joburg, one in Germiston, one in Kempton Park. So each of these data center will be organized into what is called a region as well. So Cape Town will be completely different regions because obviously Cape Town is more than 300 miles. Durban will probably be part of the same region if it's within the 300 miles radius. But what this means is that when you choose the redundancy of LRS, which is the cheapest and the lowest option, it means that your data is replicated in one region. You have 3 replica in one region. So let's say you have a data center at Kempton Park, you have data center in Pretoria, you have data center in Joburg town. Let's say you have 4 data centers in Joburg, right? So when you create your data in the data center in Pretoria, that particular data will be replicated to 3 other locations as well in the same region. So a copy of that data will be available in Cape Town Park, it will be available in Joburg Town, it will be available in Midrand if there's a data center there, besides the original data that you have created in Pretoria, okay? So 3 replica, very important. So, and also your data is protected against disk node rack failure. So I'm not sure if you guys have, or if you have familiarity with data center, you would usually have a rack specifically for disk. So what that means is that that rack will be powered, and that power would have redundancy as well. So meaning if one of the power goes off for whatever reasons, maybe it's a SCUM, it will automatically switch to another as well. So whatever rack failure that could occur, it's basically is rack failure proof as well. Write is acknowledged when all replicas are committed, which means that when you make changes to your copy in Pretoria, it would automatically make those changes automatically in all the other data center in the same region. Now, this is for locally redundant storage. And this is superior for dual parity RAID. If you're familiar with the RAID system, I'm not going to go into details of that, but we have different types of RAID systems. All right, so you have parity across the 3 other data center in the same region. Really, that's what it means. So, and the second option is what is called a zone redundance storage, so ZRS. So ZRS simply means that you have all the capability of LRS, so you have your data stored in 3 different data centers in the same zone and stored in 3 additional zones as well, okay, in one region. Unfortunately, this might not be something that you can use in the South African region because we only have 2 zones. So we only have 2 zones in one region. So the ZRS might not be available in the South African region. We'll actually have a look at that just now. But for regions where you have for locations where you have multiple regions and multiple data center, you can basically have 3 copies in one region and then 3 additional copy in another region as well. So example would be that your copy of data will be stored in Joburg, another copy will be stored in Cape Town, another copy will be stored in Eastern Cape, another copy will be stored in Durban, and so on and so forth as well. It also protects your data against disk node rack and zone failure. So if one zone fails completely, like if the whole of Johannesburg go under, well, luckily you have a copy of your data as opposed to LRS. LRS, your entire data is stored in one zone. So it doesn't matter how many data centers there. If the zone, the entire Joburg zone goes down, you will not have access to your data as well. This also synchronously writes to all 3 zones, which means when you make changes to a file, that change, when it's committed, when you are shown that the change has been written, it also writes that change to all the other data center across the zone replication as well. Okay, so GRS, it's called a global redundant storage. This is one of the most expensive, if not the most expensive, and the reason is because it's got 6 replicas, 2 regions, 3 per region. So it basically has, 6 replicas in each region, and it stores your data in 2 different regions as well, and 3 replica per those regions as well. So basically in your primary region, it will have 6 replica. In 2 additional regions, it will also have 3 replica in each of those regions as well. So this always protects you against major regional disasters. So if the whole South Africa goes under, for example, other regions will contain your data, and it asynchronously copies your data to the secondary location as well. So meaning data changes would happen in your primary region first, and then it will be written to your secondary region as well. So you also can combine a zone redundant storage and the global redundant storage. But this option is actually called the GRS, read access to the secondary. So in the case of a GRS, This has your data. So for example, South Africa would contain 6 replica of your data, and a copy will be stored like in Europe, but the Europe data will not be accessible to you. It's just a read-only copy. It's not made available for you. But with the RAGRS, it simply means that you would have the same thing, globally redundant storage. However, the difference will be that your secondary location will essentially be accessible for read-only access as well. So you could, have a primary location in South Africa, and you could have another geo-redundant location in Europe, and your Europe secondary site would also be, available for you to be able to use as well. So you'd have read access, but not write access. You would just be able to read it. The scenario that companies use mostly for this is essentially just the ability to be able to use these secondary locations for reporting purposes, where data changes will not happen. So you have a separate secondary endpoint, and that's really just the difference here. So when you create a GRS or a ZRS or an LRS, you have one endpoint. But when you get a RAGRS, for example, you have a separate endpoint for the read access to your secondary location as well. So recovery point objectives, basically delays to a secondary can be queried, so you can see how long, what the delay would be between one region and another. This is basically, RPO is a way of calculating how far you can go. If I lose my primary data, how far back can I go in the replica as well. So you might have some interval in between as well. So if you want more information, guys, I've shared some, I've shared the manual with you guys as well. You can read up a little bit more on the redundancy, but this is actually quite important. LRS also provide at least 99.99999% durability of object over a given year, so which is the lowest cost replication option, and it offers the least durability and other options as well. So we have 2 additional redundancy that we haven't spoken about. So one is the Geozone redundant storage. So you can think of Geozone redundant storage as a combination of the geo redundant storage and the zone redundant storage. So 6 replica 3+1 zones in 2 different regions. Obviously, this also protect against disk node RAD and so on. And it also provides synchronous write to all 3 zones and asynchronous to the secondary zone as well. Then you also have read access to Geozone redundant storage. This basically just adds a layer of read access to your secondary locations, and it provides also a separate endpoint, and also the RPO delete for secondary can be queried to find out what those endpoints are. All right, so I think the first thing we need to do now is to sort of go into the system and create an account in Azure Portal, and then we'll also look at some capability in the Cloud Shell as well. So I'm going to open up my browser, and then I'm going to go to portal.azure.com. Internet was so much faster in the morning, but at least it works. Now I'm going to sign into my account. Because I have single sign-in, you just click on the name. I don't have to provide the password. And I want to make sure that I still have a subscription on this account. That's very important. Otherwise, you will not be able to create anything. And yes, my subscription is still active. You can see there as well. And I have 400 and, oh, this is my current cost. And I have 977.28 cents available. All right, so let's look at how to create a storage account. So to create a storage account, I'm just going to go to create resource. If you scroll down, you can see the storage here, and then you can click on it and create the storage from there. But this is one of the things that gets created very often all the time in Azure. So you might probably be able to find them on the list here as well. But if it's not, you can just go to storage account. and then you can click on the storage accounts right there. So I'm going to click on storage accounts. And then you have all of these process that you have to go through. So first is the basic advanced networking, data protection, encryption tags, and so on, for you to be able to create a storage account. So the first thing I'm going to do is to choose my subscription. I'm using the Microsoft Partner Network. And then I'm going to be putting this in a resource group called Summer Program. And if you remember, you can create a separate resource group for, but in this case, I'm putting everything in the Summer Program so that whenever I need to delete them, I just delete everything in the Summer Program as well. We are hosting a website in this environment as well. So that's the website resource group. I'm not going to be using that. And then when I scroll down, I need to give my storage account a name. So because your storage account is publicly accessible on the internet, it needs to have a DNS routable name as well. So if I just say new storage, for example, this is probably already taking, you can see this is because it's checking against the global DNS to check if the storage has been used already. So I can basically say summer program, all right, and then I can say storage accounts, and then I can put at the end of it my initial, so GO. Okay, and you can see that this storage account is unique enough and is routable on the internet. Now, here's where I get to choose the option of the region. So I can put this anywhere. I can put this in, you can see all the other regions that are available. So I can choose any of the regions. You have the South African region, you have the Europe region. So I'm usually just going to choose the North Europe region, and I'm going to scroll down. And then you can see I can choose the standard storage accounts. So this is the most recommended, or I can choose the premium account. The premium is a lot more expensive, only supports Blob, doesn't support page queues and all these other options that is available. So I'm going to choose the first one. And you can see also the redundancy here basically shows you all the redundancy options that we spoke about earlier. So you can see the locally redundant storage, you can see the geo-redundant storage, and then you can read more about this. You can see this is the lowest cost options with basic protection against server rack and drive failure, recommended for non-critical solutions. Zone, immediate options with protection against data center failure, recommended for high availability scenario. And intermediate options with failover capability in a secondary region, recommended for backups scenario. And you can see here optimal data protections solutions that includes offering of both GRS, geo-redundant storage, and the ZRS, zone redundant storage as well. So in my case, I'm just going to choose the first one, and I'll click on the next button. So the next button would take me to the advanced menu. And in the advanced menu, we spoke about this earlier. It does provide security at rest. So you can see here, require secure transfer for REST API options. These are basically enabled by default, allow enabling public access on containers. So if I create a folder in here, it'll be available publicly. Enable storage account access key. Now, this is usually going to be the most primary way of accessing the storage. Is a bunch of random numbers that are generated for you. It's a key that you essentially need to be able to access any of this particular storage account if it's available publicly as well. You can also use the role-based access control, which is using Active Directory, and you can create groups and just add users with their email addresses there. And this will basically then be the options that will be used as well. So in case of your data being in transit, you have a TLS version 1.2. This is transport layer security. So when your data is moving across the internet, it will be protected. The version of these particular encryption use is going to be version 1.2. I would just leave that by default. But if for some reason you have a special requirement to use a lower version of a TLS, you can specify that version as well. Okay, so you can also enable the permitted scope for copy operations. So I can copy data from one storage account to another storage account in the cloud. So you can just restrict this from any storage account, but some other options available include things like I can copy data from here into a virtual machine or into the same from storage account in the same Azure tenant. This is from any storage account. So I can move information from here into your storage account if you have your own subscription. And there's another type of data storage that is used for big data analytics, which is called data lake storage gen tools. You can see it's a file level access. It provides, access control to role-based access control. And this is specifically used for big data analytics as well. So I'm not going to enable this. I also, on the Blob Storage, I don't want to enable SFTP. This is ways in which you can basically upload and pull information from it. I also, here, I don't want to use the network file system v3. I want to allow cross-tenant replications, which is something that that it will be enabled because of this particular storage from any account. And then remember the tier that we also spoke about. So frequently access data on a day-to-day basis, we use the hot tier. And then cool tier is infrequently accessed data, and this is usually for backup scenario purposes as well. So we also have this thing called Azure Files if you want to basically bring in terabytes and terabytes of data into Azure. So you can see it provides file shares support for up to 100 terabytes. So these are large file storage accounts, do not have the ability to convert to Redundance offering later on. So if you don't have that requirement, don't check it. So I'm going to click on the next button. And then here in the network connectivity, I can enable public access from all network. So meaning on the internet, on the private network, anyone will be able to access the storage account. I also have the ability to enable public access from selected virtual networks and IP addresses. This will be the most restrictive, especially if I am looking to just access this storage from a particular applications that is hosted in a particular network environment. Or I can disable public access and use private access as well. So if you click on that, you would have to add a private endpoint that you will be accessing the storage account for. So this will be the most restrictive, where you have a particular application that will be accessing the storage from a particular endpoint. So I'm just going to keep this open for anyone in the world to be able to access it. But obviously, remember, there's that key that you need to provide for you to be able to use it as well. And then there's this thing called network routing. It's called Microsoft Network Routing Options. What this really means is that if you were to access a copy of your data that is located in a completely different region, that copy of your data would go through Microsoft Network to get to your region to be available. And it just provides an extra layer of security, but costs a little bit more. And if you don't want that option and you just want your data to be pulled through the internet, you can just use internet routing as well. So what this means is I'm going to leave it on the Microsoft networking routing, but if I wanted to access a copy of my data in the US and I'm here in South Africa, it will basically go through the Microsoft data center South Africa to the Microsoft data center US for me to be able to access that information. And only when it's here in South Africa would I then be able to access it through the internet. So I'm literally using Microsoft Network to be able to access my data. It provides extra layer of security. My information is not overly exposed on the internet. And the internet routing, on the other hand, would literally just access that particular storage on the internet directly as well. Data protections, we've spoken about data protections. So there's something called soft delete in a storage account. It really just means that if you delete anything in Microsoft Azure storage account, it's not essentially deleted. It's basically soft deleted, which means that it would just be marked for deletions. And you can see that it will retain that information for 7 days, and you can do the same thing, soft delete for container. So this is for blob, this is for container, and this is for file shares as well. And we also have this option as well. You can enable point-in-time restore for container. So this would use additional storage, but what this means is that If for some reason you would like to restore your data to a point in time, so maybe last week Tuesday at 1 o'clock, you can basically be able to do that if you enable this option. But note, this is definitely just going to cost a lot more storage for you as well, and because multiple versions of your data will be created at a point in time. So you can also enable versioning for tracking. So versioning, like point in time, even though it's not going to be used for restoring, it will be used to track different versions of a data as your data changes over time. This will also incur more storage. And then we have what is called enable blob change feed. This is, you can subscribe to this storage account. So if any changes occur on that storage account, you can get notification on it as well. So if you click on that, you will have to keep all the logs. You can delete changes after a particular amount of days. You can say after 7 days. But if you keep all the logs, this will essentially keep all the changes, and then you can get access to it from there as well. So you can enable version level immutability. So what this also means is that immutability means that you cannot delete it, which means that whatever version level is created for you, that those versions cannot be deleted. I'm going to click next. And here for encryption, so by default, Microsoft really provides an encryption key that is used to encrypt your data. And this encryption key is managed entirely by Microsoft, but for whatever reasons, if you don't trust Microsoft enough and you want to protect your data, maybe it's a requirement of the law, you can provide your own key that will be used to encrypt your data, which would mean that even Microsoft does not have access to your data as well. So irrespective of what option you choose here, if you choose the managed Microsoft managed keys, you can choose that you only want to use the Microsoft managed keys to encrypt blob storage only, or you can use it to encrypt all types of file types. So things like blob file, tables, and queues. So I'm going to leave it on the default options, and I can also enable infrastructure level encryptions. This just allow Azure encryption storage account data at rest. Infrastructure encryption adds a second layer of encryptions to your storage account. If you want to, you can enable that as well. So tag is something that we haven't spoken about. I think we would have a separate sessions where we will sort of discuss tags as well. But if I want to tag my applications, I can basically say that things like created by, and then I can put a value here. So in this case, I can say created by Gideon, and you can also have another options as well. So maybe this particular storage is for a department. So I can say this is for this department, and then I can specify the department name. So sales, for example, so that when I'm looking at my cost analysis, I can basically be able to group by tags. So I can see cost by tags. So cost that is incurred by Gideon or cost that is incurred by a particular department as well. Well, I don't want this option, so I'm just going to delete it. I'll click on the next for reviews. And Microsoft will then run a final validation. Okay. Microsoft will then run a final validation. Microsoft will run a final validation on your account. And then it would tell you that either you have some errors, things that you need to change somewhere, or if everything is fine, the validations will be successful and the create button will be available, and then you can hit the create button as well. All right, so this is how you create a storage account, and you can see that the process has started, and we've submitted that request for deployment to Azure, and we'll just give it a few minutes and come back, and we will see how that particular storage account is created. So before we move on, something that doesn't get discussed quite often, it's basically what I've just showed you now is essentially one way in which you can create accounts, basically using the browser called the Azure portal. We also have something called Powershell, okay? And Powershell is a command prompt utility that allows you to be able to run scripts that can create items in Azure. In fact, we have quite a few of them. We have what is called Azure CLI. We also have what is called Azure Powershell. So if you open the browser like so, and then you go to Google, and then you type Microsoft Azure PowerShell. You will be able to download, so you have to go on the Microsoft Azure one as well. So you'll be able to download a PowerShell module that you can install as well. Before we finish the course, I would essentially give you guys like a rundown of PowerShell and what it is. But PowerShell, it's basically a command prompt utility like your CMD. It's available on Windows, and you can also install a version of it on Linux and Mac OS as well. This is essentially called the CLI. And what you can do is you can use it to query any module that is installed on your machine. So if I get, say, for example, so the PowerShell command is in the form of an action or a verb. So it's in form of a verb now, like so. So for example, get service would essentially show all the services that are on this particular machine as well. If I say get process, for example, you can see that it's showing all the processes that are running on this machine. It also has a concept of piping. So I can say get service, and I can pipe the result of the get service into another command as well. So this command, so where objects is maybe if I want to filter this, and then I can say $_ status for this service equal to running. All right, and then if I press enter, you see that the services that I'm showing are basically services that are running on the machine. If I do a normal get service, you can see we have services that are running, we have services that are stopped. But if I say get service and I pipe that to a where object, where the status is equal to running, and you can see that particular column is a status column. You can see it's a status column. Okay, so I can query with that. So if you press the enter key, then you will see all the running services as well. What if I want to basically find a particular services that has SVC in it? I can say also get service. And then where objects, and here I can say $_ underscore, which represent whatever the result from the previous sign is. And then I can say name equal to or contain. So I can literally do pretty much anything. So if I say equal here and I specify in quote WS SEARCH, and I close like that and I press enter. The equal sign needs to be right next to that as well. And you can see it only shows all the different option, that particular options that meets that criteria. And if you want to, you can change that to something completely different, like you know, any of the options available here. So this is essentially what PowerShell is. And if I want to create something, I can from the PowerShell as well. Like I said, I'm going to take you guys through options for PowerShell a little later on as well. However, there's something called Cloud Shell, and Cloud Shell is actually quite powerful. So let me open up the tab that we were on for this. So you can see that our storage account has been created. All right. If you go on, let me just go github.com/learning, and then you go on repository, and in the repository you go to AZ204, AZ.204, which is right there on the list, and then you choose the first options, which is the English options. You go to instructions, go to labs, and here you go to module 3. You will also see there is a so that's what I've showed you how to create a storage account. If you come down a little bit more, you can see that you also have the ability to be able to, okay, that's just writing code for your storage account. We'll look at that later. The PowerShell option is also available on the list here as well. But I mean, this thing takes a lot of time to sort of like go through. So there is also some aspect of this that I will also record and share with you as well. But if I go to the resource, I have just created a storage account. So you can see that's the name of the storage account. And on the left-hand side here, you can see some of the functions and settings that you can make on the storage account. So activity logs, obviously, will show you all the activities happening on the storage account. There shouldn't be a lot, probably only one, because I've just created this storage account. You can see an audit policy actions was created on it and it succeeded. And this was initiated by that user. We had a tag that we had created on the storage account. If we want to, we can create additional tags as well. If we have issues with the storage account, we can use the diagnostics and so on. And this is where we manage access control. If we're using the access control like so, you can do data migrations from here. You can look at different events that is all happening on the storage. And the data storage section is where you actually manage the information that you store on them as well. So if I go to containers, I can come to container and you can see by default you have a container called logs. This is where all logs operations relating to the storage is essentially created. It's essentially stored. So I'm going to create two containers, one for videos and one for images as well. So I'm going to come here and say images. And then when you create containers, you have the ability to specify the access level that you want. So private access, no anonymous access. If I make an anonymous access, this can be accessed from anywhere. You can see the option is anonymous access to the blob storage. You can also say container anonymous read access for container and blob. But I want to make sure that you specify some sort of key to be able to access these as well. And you can also choose the encryption scope. So at this point in time, I'm just going to specify the access. I can also enable that version level immutability that we spoke about. And I can also use the encryption scope for all blobs as well. So if I create this, that image will be created automatically. I'm going to create another container. So I'm going to call this videos. I'm going to use the private access level, click OK. And then, so I have currently two containers in here. So if I click on the image container, it automatically takes me to the image container and I can upload. In fact, you can just go to your machine and then you can go to pictures and then you can take any items from your machine and you can either drag and drop them into the folder, or you can just come here and go to upload. And then when you click on the upload, you can search on your local machine for items that you would like to upload. And then you can see some options are also available as well. So you can also upload VHD file pages. You can choose what type of upload that you're performing. It's a blob because it's an image. I can choose upload to a particular folder. It'll create a folder in the container. I can look at the blob index tag. So if I just click upload, you can see that that image is now automatically uploaded as well. And then if I want to manage access to this particular container, so like this particular image that I've just created, I can do that. If you click on it, you will see we have this options called shared access token, or you can use the access policy. We'll talk about that just now. You can also change the access level from here, but if you do the shared access token, you can actually decide that you want to generate an access token for a particular user at a particular time. So I can create an access key, I can specify a new key that I want, or I can delegate it. I'm giving read permissions. Look at that. If you want someone to be able to add stuff here as well, you can give them read and add. You can say this read is going to start today, and it's going to start at 2:19. This is currently the current time. We're using that time, and it's going to expire today as well, and it's going to expire at, say, for example, you can say at 10 p.m. at night. And then you can also restrict access from a particular IP address. So if you know where these users are basically located and you know their IP address, you can restrict their access as well. And you can also specify that you only have to access this by using the HTTPS only, and you cannot use HTTP in this regard. So if I generate this token and I just email or send this token to someone, they would immediately be able to use this token without any. So I'm actually just going to say 2, and I'm going to say 2:30. So I'm generating this token just for 30 minutes. So if I click on generate token, because there's really no way, you can see the token has been generated. So this is basically the SaaS token, shared access token. This is the base URL. If I send this to anyone, they will be able to access that particular folder, which is the images. And depending on the permissions that I give them, either list the content, read the content, add to it, they will be able to perform all that processes using that particular image access location as well. So you also have the file share, you have the queues and so on. We have something called the Storage Explorer. If you basically want to see the content of your blob, you can do that. So if I click here, it's more like a file explorer, and you can see it's showing me all my storage content. And I can also from here, I can add a directory. I can create a directory called test. I can click on the OK button. And you can see that directory exists inside the image folder. When you click on the container, you will see that directory there as well. You can copy access to that directory from there. And so that's the Storage Explorer, which is part of the browser. You also can actually download a Azure Storage Explorer. So if you go to Azure Storage Explorer, you can hit the download button. And I think on the first day of training, I actually downloaded this. So yep, I did download it. You can see there, Azure Storage Explorer. All you have to do is just install it. And then you can say install for me only and accept the license agreement. Click yes, yes. Create a shortcut on the desktop, click install. It takes less than 30 seconds. It would automatically install the Microsoft Azure Storage Explorer. The current version is 1.25.1. And with the Storage Explorer, I don't have to connect through the browser to be able to access my storage and upload content to it. I can essentially do it from within the Azure Storage Explorer. So it'll be like you installing OneDrive application locally on your machine, and it allows you to be able to upload documents to the cloud, or downloading and installing Dropbox on your local machine. And it would also allow you to be able to upload all kinds of blobs and informations to the cloud as well. All right, while we're waiting for that to install, I don't want to move away. Let's just finish it, and then I can show you how to connect to the storage from there. So there we go. Microsoft Azure Storage Explorer is installed. If you just click on open, and in the matter of seconds, the Storage Explorer will be open, and then we will be able to start uploading content. So you can see there, that's the Storage Explorer. And what is nice about it is that to be able to access the particular storage, you can either just sign in with your Azure Storage account, and you will see all the storage hierarchies that you've created there. All right, so you can see there. So it's and it also has access to your storage emulator as well, which is a local emulator of your storage. And if I expand here, you can see that this is my storage account. And if you want, you can add a new account to it as well. So say you want to add additional storage accounts, you can come here and just say add an account. And then what kind of account do you want to add? You can see I can add a subscription, so I see everything. If I want to add a storage account, it would ask me if I have any of this. So you can see, do I have a key or an SAS, or do I have a shared access signature, which is what I was showing you guys earlier, or do I have an account name? So if I have an account name, I'll be able to copy, and I believe, yes, I do have an account name for storage account and key. I'll be able to use that as well. So for the account storage and key, let's use the options that is available here. So you can see for this particular storage account, I have an access key. Okay, so you can see there, This is my storage account name, so you can copy that storage account name. And you have usually two keys are provided for you. One is a connection strings and the other one is just a backup. So while you're renaming or taking this key down, you can use it temporarily. So I can copy this key like so, and then I can go to my storage accounts and I can say add a storage account. And then I will click on add a storage account. I have a storage account name and key. So you can put the name there and then you can put the key here. So I'll just paste the key here first. I'll go back to my Azure environment and then I'll copy my storage account name. So I'll come here and then I'll paste it here as well. I can give this a name, my e-commerce storage. And you can see with those two information, if you use HTTP and when this was created didn't allow HTTP, it will not allow you to be able to access it. So if I click connect, you can see that it automatically gives me a summary. And then if I click on the connect window, automatically that storage account will be added. So you can see successfully added a connection. And if you go to here, you'll be able to see all your storage accounts. So this is an attached storage account. That's not what I'm looking for. And I know this because if I expand my blob container, you can see I have my images here. And when I double click that images folder, you can see that folder that I uploaded earlier as well. I can also upload a file from here if I want to. So if I want to upload an additional file to that location, so I can essentially do that. I'll specify the location. I'll click here. Let's say I want to upload this document and then click on the upload. And this would automatically be uploaded here as well. You can also see that this folder, this particular container is a hot tier, and there's my document right there. If you double click on any file in here, you can see all the stuff that you can look at. You can open directly from there. So I've just opened that particular AZ204 course outline. And then you can see, you can manage versions, you can look at folder statistics, and you can see who's been accessing it. You can look at the different property information of that blob. If you want to upload a video, for example, you can do that from here as well and just say upload video, look for that video, and then you can click on it and you can upload it right there to that Microsoft storage account. Okay, so storage account with different accessibility. Let's take a shorty break for 15. Let's take a shorty break for 15 minutes. And then when we come back, we will continue with the slide and just wrap up with the slide and see how much more demonstrations we can do. All right, we'll be back at exactly 2:45. Any questions? All right, I'll see you guys at exactly 2:45. Okay, welcome back. I'm just gonna carry on. I know just a lot of people will be joining as we go. I think we have 6. Okay, let's give them like 2 minutes or so. Guys, while we are waiting for everyone to just come back in, I'm gonna just go use the bathroom quickly. I'll be right back, just a minute or two. And please, if you can maybe just admit people that are sitting in the lobby. Do you guys know how to admit people in the lobby?
Yes, I do.
Okay, cool. So, Nonaleli, I will leave that to you. Just help me admit everyone who's coming through. Let me go use the bathroom quick. Nonaleli, can you admit Amanda? Okay, thank you. Okay. Oh, sorry, I'm back, guys. Well, I think we're just probably just expecting to not. So let's carry on. So quick question. How many of you guys would like for us to have a session tomorrow, even if it's at the same time as this one, so that we can catch up? At least tomorrow we can finish the labs for these ones, and then we can also do the Cosmos DB database, which is module 4. So by Wednesday, we will be right on time.
I personally do not have a problem, say, with tomorrow this time. The only problem is going to be in the morning because I usually have load shedding in the morning. But this time it's fine by me.
Oh, I see. Okay, cool. I'm just going to go around. Yeah. Noleli.
I also don't have a problem.
Okay, cool. Akani. We have 2M. Yeah, M Moen, you can go.
I also don't have a problem, sir.
All right, cool.
I don't have a problem with any time, so it's cool with me. Okay. I don't have load shedding at all.
You don't have load shedding at all. Lucky you. All right, cool. Awesome, guys. So let's carry on. Let's finish up with this module. So sorry?
Can you please help me? I need to choose this option. I'm creating the storage account. I'm not where it says blobs and files only, or it's all services. Which one do you choose?
Sorry, can you say that again? I'm struggling to hear you.
I'm saying where it says you must choose the options. It's blobs and files only, or it all service types.
No, it's the standard one. So not the blobs and files only. So the standard one, the one with the blobs and blob files, pages, and queues.
Okay, no problem.
All right, cool. All right, guys, I'm gonna just so in this exercise, we looked at how to create an account in Azure Portal. We also looked at, so I was just about to get to the Cloud Shell as well. So the Cloud Shell basically is where you can create an account with a PowerShell command in the cloud. At this point, I'm not going to show you how to do that. I think I'm just going to add it as part of the things that goes on the video as well. But if you want to create a Cloud Shell account, you would need to go into the Azure portal, and you can see that button on the top right corner there that looks like a greater than sign with an underscore. And what you need to know with the Cloud Shell account is that it basically has to have, for you to be able to use it, it has to have a storage. It has to have a of its own that is required to store all the Cloud Shell files and everything. So whenever you want to create a Cloud Shell account, it's going to ask to create a storage. This is a special storage specifically. It requires an Azure file, supersys files that you use for your transaction. So I'm just going to do, I already have an existing just new storage for me. Okay, so let's just give it a minute. All right. It's coming through. So one of the major differences between a storage account in the browser and in a storage account, creating a storage account in the browser in the Cloud Shell and creating a storage account with PowerShell is that with PowerShell on premises like this one, you need to first connect to Azure account like so. And when you do this, what's going to happen is it's going to go ahead. So I'm in the command prompt utility now. It's going to go ahead and open up a, just trying to admit. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my, it's going to open an account, my account signing window. And then if I sign in, it would automatically connect me to Azure. So, so you can see I am now connected to Microsoft Azure, and this is my tenant. And if you want to, you can simply just verify if you, you can just say get AZ location, press the enter key. And if this works, it means you have successfully connected to Microsoft Azure. And also you can see that the it's a bit slow because obviously whatever is happening now, it's basically going across the wire to the internet and pulling that information out of Microsoft Azure as well. And you can see that all of the information that you see here represents all the different Microsoft Azure locations. So you can see East US, that's the region, that's the longitude, that's the latitude, that's the physical location is in Virginia. And you can see it's a type of physical location, and you can see another location is US 2 region. That's the longitude also in Virginia, South Central. So you can see all of the Azure location. And if you want to, you can say get AZ location, hit the tab like so, and then pipe that to a select, and then you can just say location only. So this will just display the location only without all the other details. And that's what the select keyword is for. And like I said, because we're doing this in the cloud, it's also sort of taking a little, we're doing this on premises, we're also sort of taking a little bit of time as well. So if you want to create a storage account, this command, so you can see all of the different location actually shows up as well. There's a command that you can use, it's called new AZ storage account, like so. And then here you would specify the resource group name, where you want to put it. And obviously the resource group name can be a variable, some kind of variable, like so. And then you would also specify the name of the storage account. Remember, we had to sort of devise a very GO storage account. GO, I'm just going to put that there. And then you can also now specify a location where you want to put the storage account. You can specify with maybe a variable location. And then if you want to specify a type of storage account, and this could be a standard RAG/RSA, like so. And then the kind of storage account could be a storage V2 as well. So if I execute this, obviously the variables would need to be initialized with some sort of location. I can see there we have a East US 2. I could actually just use that location for it as well. But the way you would type, obviously the way you would use this to create it would be, like in this case, let me just move this away. You would say new Azure storage account. And if you hit the tab, so one thing with PowerShell is that if you say SB help, and then you type the command AZ storage accounts, and then you press the enter key, oh, sorry, get help. New AZ storage account. And then if I do example here and I press the enter key, it's going to show me different examples that you can use to create a storage account. So that way you don't have to remember how to create a storage account. So you can see there's quite a lot of examples here on the list. So we have the first example is new storage account, resource group name. You specify the resource group name where you want to put the storage account, the name of the storage account, the location where you want to put it. You can see West US. The SKU is basically a standard GRS. You can see another option, new Azure storage account. You can specify the name, location, SKU. The kind is Blob Storage. Access tier is hot. So all of these options are available for you. So oftentimes, if you...
Sorry to step, you say, I'm not really sure whether it's my line or you stop talking. I don't hear anything on my side.
All right. Guys, can you guys hear me? It's probably your line. I think everyone else can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, cool. So everyone seems to, so to Liswa, it looks like it's just you. Maybe you might want to move around a little bit just to get your network back. But yeah. All right, but don't worry, everything is recorded, so you can always go through it again as well. Okay, so the same thing that I can do on premises with PowerShell, which is what I'm showing you right now, is the same thing that I can do inside the Cloud Shell as well. The difference with the Cloud Shell is that if I come in here and I type the get AZ location, I don't have to connect or log into Azure because I am already logged into Azure. So in that case, it would just automatically use my current context to be able to connect. So if I say get AZ location and I pipe that to select and I say location and I press the enter key, this would automatically just execute the same thing as well. So if you want to create a resource group, you can do the same. You can just say, for example, so let's say we want to create a resource. So if you want to create a variable with PowerShell, you can do that as well. So let me show you how you would do that. You would use a $sign. So you can say VR1 equal to 10. I can create another $sign VR2 equal to 30. And I can say VR result equal to VR1 plus a $sign VR2. And then if I look in the result, you can see the answer in the result is essentially 4. So whenever you want to create a variable, just remember that just choose a random name and then choose the random name and make sure you preface it with a $sign. Okay, so I'm gonna just try and choose a location that is equal to, I think, West Europe. I'm obviously going to find it first. So what I'm doing here is I'm getting all the AZ location. I'm looking for a particular location that is equal to West Europe, which is where I put my my resource group a moment ago. Let's just wait for that to come down. Okay, that doesn't show. Let's say get location. Oh, by the way, it's not a name, it's location. So if I come here and I say location and I press the enter key, and you will see what I'm trying to do in a moment. Let's see, it's really slow. I'm sure that has a lot to do with my internet. Okay, so you can see we have a West Europe location, okay, with the display name of West Europe and the region and everything. So what I can then do is this particular command, if I want to put it in a variable, I can just say $West Europe. So I can say WE equal to that, or let's just use a lowercase equal to that. If I press the enter key, this command will be executed and the results will be saved inside a variable called WE, which in this case stands for West Europe. So if I also want to get the resource group, so now if I say $we, now let's do that, $we, and I press the enter key, you can see that particular West Europe is stored now in that variable. If I also say get AZ resource group, and I press the enter key, this is going to show all the resource groups that are in the system. I think the one that are in Azure, the one that we, is the summer program, like so. So if I do the same and I say get AZ resource group, and then I pipe that to, so it's resource group name $_ resource group name equal to, and I say summer program, like so, and I press the enter key. Obviously, I would only see the summer program. So now if I come in here and I say $RG1 equal to that, and I press the enter key, that particular variable now holds the RG1 as well. So if I decide now that I want to create a resource group, I can then say new dash AZ storage account, not a resource group. So new dash AZ storage account. And then I say that I want a resource group name. Then I can specify $we, because you know what type of resource group is in there. And then if I choose a name, I can specify the GID OGO storage 01. I know that's going to be unique. And then the location, I know that RG1, $RG1 is also a valid location. And then if I say SKU name and I say standard, so let's say standard underscore RAGRS. And then finally, if I say kind, and kind is storage v2, and then I press the enter key, validate SKU. That cannot validate the argument SKU. The argument standard. Oh, that is wrong. RG is basically RAGRS. RAGRS. If I press the enter key, now from the command prompt, well, the specified location is invalid. Okay, cool. So I think I know why. So the location, I don't necessarily have to use the variable, because I could just say resource group name. I could say summer program. And then in the location as well, I could just say West Europe. Like so. If I press the enter key, this should work, because West Europe has a location. So the West Europe that was returned was an object earlier that I stored in the variable, and that's the reason why it had that issue. So it's going to go ahead and create a resource group called GID Ogongo storage 01. And obviously, because this is definitely going to take a little bit of time, so if we leave it to do that, eventually you would see the result will come back as well. And we can also do the same thing from here. So if you want to create a new AZ storage account, you can do that. You say storage account, and then you just need to specify the resource group name. The resource group name for our case is a summer program. And then the name of the storage account, I can create another one. So I can say AZ204 GID Ogongo storage 02. Okay, and then the location, So dash location where I want to put this, it's going to be West Europe. And then the SKU name is going to be standard. Let's use the RAG-RS again. And then my kind would also be a storage v2. So if I press the enter key, there's a possibility that this might actually finish quicker than the other one as well. So if you look at the PowerShell, okay, this storage account is created, AZ storage account. So if I want to get all the storage accounts and I press the enter key, you can see that I now have a summer program 8951. I also have another one, which is the one that I AZ204 GIDOGOST0. And then this is the one that was created for the Cloud Shell. And this is the one that I created using this PowerShell command. And this is the SP storage account that I created earlier as well. You can see these are all standard V2 hot storage. And you can see this one is just a normal storage account as well. So depending on what you're trying to do, you can execute a PowerShell command to help you carry that out as well. But just remember that if you want to, if you don't know how to do this, and I don't expect you to remember all of them, even I don't, you can just say create virtual machine with PowerShell in Azure, like so. And then when you just go on the Microsoft Azure website, you can see, create PowerShell with Azure. And then if you look there, you will see the commands will be available for you as well. So first you create a resource group. You can see that's a resource group with a name and a location. Second, you create a virtual machine. You can see so at least the most important thing is basically the new AZ VM. So if you already know that, then you need to go to your command prompt in your PowerShell, I think is the next one, and then just say get help, okay, new, that's the name of the account, AZVM, and then you can say examples, and then you press the enter key. So if you have the docs library installed locally on this PowerShell, it would automatically show you all of the different options. I mean, so we have option 1 for creating a virtual machine. You have option 2 for creating a virtual machine. You have option 3 for, and so on. So then you can then come and say, okay, cool. I am going to use one of these options for creating a virtual machine. New as a VM name, my VM. So that's the name of the VM. You pass in the credential, you get the credential. So this is going to pop up. So that's what this does. It's going to pop up and ask you for the credential. And if you provide the credential, it will just go ahead and create the virtual machine with a lot of default options as well. So this is another example. Here, you want to basically get you want to store the credential in this variable. You want to store the password. So you're getting the password and you're converting it to secure string. So it doesn't show as character. You put it in that variable. And then here you get the location, West US, you put it in that variable, resource group name, you put it in that variable. And then you can get a storage account called My Disk. And then when you come down a little bit, you can then create your virtual machine and specify all of those details as well. So the examples are usually very, very helpful. If for whatever reason you use the get help and then you say AZ new -AZ VM, for example, and it doesn't show a help, what you need to do is say updates help on your local machine and just press the enter key. It will download all the help that you require for that module that you need as well, so that you can start basically using the help system to be able to create any resource in Microsoft Azure. So don't forget, if you know what the name of the command is, just use the get help. It'll be the best way to sort of like manage it. And at least that way you'll be able to see all of the resources that you're creating from a command prompt as well. So I just want to come back in here and delete those storage accounts that I created earlier, because I know not the summer one. So let me go into the summer program, and I just want to get rid of the AZ204 GIDOGOST, and I want to delete also this one as well. And then, geez, there's another one that is created automatically. So you can just highlight all the storage accounts. Oh, I'm not deleting the resource group. We actually can delete the resource group as well because there's really nothing. It's a live environment and I don't want it to just incur a lot of money as time goes on. So I'm going to delete that resource group, and then pretty much everything that we had created inside is also deleted as well. So just be aware of that. Okay, and you can see the process has started. So it will go ahead and delete everything inside that resource group, and it would also delete the resource group as well. And I would no longer have that resource group available in the system. Okay, let's finish up with the slides. So we've looked at how to create a storage account by using the Azure portal. We've also looked at how to create a storage account by using the Cloud Shell. And I've also showed you how to clean up your resources as well. And in fact, there's a way in which you can clean up your resources. Let me just show you that real quick. You need to just remember, okay, it's downloading updates, and I just canceled it, which is fine. So if you say get AZ storage accounts, and you press the enter key, this is going to show you all the storage accounts, correct? And then if you say get AZ storage accounts, and then you say, and you pipe that to where the return, so I think this will be the name equal to, you can say summer equal to summer program, like so. And then you press the enter key if that oh, okay, I think I've just deleted it, but let's see if I can type out the Cloud Shell West Europe. So Cloud Shell Storage West Europe. Okay, that should return at least one storage account for me. I'm not sure. Okay. Oh, I see what the issue is. It's not name. It's actually resource group name. So if I press the enter key, you can see that resource group name shows up. If I want to delete this, I can just do the same there and say remove AZ storage account, like so. And I can do it in a verbose. So this will just show me as the storage account is getting deleted, and I can also force it as well. So if there's anything inside that needs a confirmation, it would just automatically delete them before this is, it'll force it to delete as well, because sometimes some items inside a particular storage account might require, or in a resource, in a storage account might require a confirmation. So if you don't have a confirmation, it would just fail unless you apply force to it, and it would automatically delete it for you as well. So you might want to save this command somewhere, and then you can use it to delete all your storage account. In fact, you can use it to delete all resources within Microsoft Azure, just to help you conserve money as well. And that's the task for cleaning up your resources in the labs as well. So in the second module, we obviously we identified the different types of storage account. We looked at the resource hierarchy. So from the storage account to the container into the blob itself. We explained how data is securely stored and protected through redundancy. We looked at how to create a blob storage account by using Azure Cloud Shell. So this is something that you need to sort of know how to do. So this last module, okay, it's actually the second to the last module. We're going to talk about we're going to describe how each of the access tiers are optimized. We've sort of spoken about this, and we'll also create something called a lifecycle policy. And finally, we'll look at how to rehydrate blob data store in archive as well. So we spoke about the different access tiers. So hot is frequently accessed, cool is less frequently accessed, and archive is rarely accessed. And then, so what is the life cycle of a storage? Well, the life cycle of a storage simply indicates the creation, the use, and the destruction of that particular storage as well. So You can create a lifecycle management policy to let you transition blobs to a cooler storage tier, so hot to cool, hot to archive, or cool to archive to optimize for performance and cost. So over time, if a particular storage becomes less used, and then, instead of paying for a hot tier, you might want to sort of switch to a cold tier. You can create a lifecycle management policy to let you do that as well. You can also create a lifecycle management policy to help you delete blob at the end of their lifecycle. So if they haven't been accessed in the last 30 days, the policy would just go ahead and delete all that particular blob. You can also define rules to be used once per day at the storage account level, and you can apply rules to container or subset of blobs as well. Using prefixes and filters, you'll be able to find that specific point. So here's an example of what you do with the blob storage lifecycle. So you can, like I said, you can move from hot to cool and cool to hot, and then you can even delete a hot storage. You can basically restore hot storage. You can convert it to archive as well. So all of the options are available here. Okay. So if you have any questions, like I said, feel free to basically let me know. But just to sort of summarize, so if you consider a scenario where data gets frequently accessed during the early stages of a lifecycle, but only occasionally accessed after 2 weeks beyond the first month, well, the data set is rarely accessed. You can have policies. Hot storage is best during the early stages, but you can have storage policies that will basically convert it to a cool storage as well. So that's the whole idea of the storage lifecycle policy as well. So obviously, we know what a policy is. It's a collection of rules that basically, when certain criteria are met, those rules will have actions. Each rules within the policy has several parameters. It has a name. If it's enabled, the type of rule and the definition. And each rule definition includes a filter, sets, and a set of actions as well. So the filter would help define where these particular policies will be applied to, and also the actions would define the type of actions that will be applied as well. So you can use the filter sets to limit the rule actions to a certain set of objects within a container or objects. So you can essentially just use a rule filter to be able to define blob types, prefix match, blob index match, and so on and so forth. And then actions can include things like converting from one tier to cool, and then you can also enable auto tier to hot from cool. You can also go from tier to archive. You can also just delete the storage as well. So those are the things that you do with the action. This is an example of what a policy looks like. You can see it has a name. So rule 1, it's enabled, true. The type is a lifecycle policy. And then you can see rule 2 is another policy. It has a definition, and the definitions defines the lifecycle rule that you want as well. So to implement a blob storage, storage lifecycle policy, you can do that by using one of the PowerShell command or the CLI. So this one is specifically CLI. You can see earlier we created Azure storage account by using new or get or remove easy storage account. But this is essentially a PowerShell and or a cloud shell command, but this one that you're looking on the screen here is actually an Azure CLI. So this is the kind of command you would use on a Linux machine or on a Mac machine to be able to implement this particular location as well. So here we're saying Azure Storage Account Management Policy. So we are creating an Azure Storage Account Management Policy. The account name is going to be that, the policy is that, and the resource group where you want to put it is going to be that as well. So rehydrate blob data from archive. So 2 options for rehydrating your blob data is stored in an archive is copy an archive blob to an online tier. So for whatever reason, if you move your data into the archive tier and later on you realize that you need to bring it back, you can sort of you can copy this information back to the online tier as well. You can also change a blob access tier to an online tier if you want to, but I think you can only do that in PowerShell. So there's a set blob tier operations that you can execute, and then you can perform your rehydration priority by specifying either a standard priority or by specifying a high priority as well. So when you rehydrate a blob, you can set the priority for the rehydration operations via the option for rehydration, and this will just basically, so the standard rehydrations will process in the order in which it was received, and will take up to 15 hours. The high would basically rehydrate request will be prioritized over standard priority request and may complete in less than 1 hour for objects under 10 gigabytes of size as well. So these are some of the options available when it comes to storage account management policy that would help you just maintain the policies on the storage account as well, or the life cycle of the storage account. Now, lesson 3, I'm going to go through it quite quickly, but this is also one of those things that I would record as well in the video, so you guys have access to it and you can use it to follow through. This is essentially a module that deals with the programmatic access to the Microsoft Azure storage account. So pretty much everything here is so the type of scenario you would need that would require this is if you're building like a Windows application or web applications or a console applications, which would be very seldom the case. And through this window or web applications, you want to be able to upload documents or files or anything to the cloud using the Azure storage account. You can essentially do that. Your application storage can be Azure storage account. And the only thing you need to know is to just learn all the classes and the APIs that are basically used to help you basically create the blob in Azure as well. So in this lesson, we're going to finalize by looking at how to create an application to create and manipulate data by using Azure Storage Client library for blob storage. So on the client side, these are basically the libraries that you can call. We would also look at how to manage container properties and metadata by using the .NET and the REST API. There are 5 major classes that you need to be aware of. Okay, I know you are not all of you are programmers, and I'm tempted to go into explanation of what a class is, but a class is a blueprint for code that you want to execute. So you can see the first class there, it's a blob client. This is basically a code that you can call that would allow you to manipulate Azure Storage Blob. The second one is the blob client options, which allows you to provide additional client configuration options for connecting to Azure Blob Storage. You also have the blob container client, which allows you to manipulate Azure storage containers and their blobs. So if I want to basically manage properties on an Azure blob account, I'll use the first and second. If I want to manipulate content inside a container of a blob, I will use the blob container client. And then with the blob service client, this basically just allows you to be able to manipulate Azure storage service resources and blob container, and the storage accounts will provide the top level namespaces for the blob service to connect to as well. So for the blob URL builder, it just provides you a convenient way to modify the content of a URL instance to point to a different Azure storage resource like an account container and blob. In my video, I'm going to show you how you can basically create this from scratch. So there's a few setups that you have to do. I'm going to show you how to do that as well. Prepare the .NET project, build a full application, run the code and test, and then clean up your application as well. So what I will do is in the video that I'm going to be sharing tomorrow, I will basically have recorded how to go about building a simple console application that would allow you to be able to sort of add information to the Microsoft Azure storage account as well. So just to look at some of the properties that you will see here. So the blob container, which is support system property and uses defined metadata in addition to data they contain. You can retrieve container properties by using the get properties. You can get property async if you want to run it asynchronously. You can set metadata on a container by using the set metadata, and you can also do async as well if you want to do it synchronously. So in case some of these things doesn't make any sense, don't worry. I will explain it properly in the video, and I will show you what that means as well. You can also retrieve and set properties of metadata for blob resources by using the REST API. So the REST API is essentially the easiest way to be able to access storage. You can see you just need a URL to the storage. For example, if you look at the GET and the header in that GET, you can see it's http:// my storage account. So that could be that storage account name that we mentioned, GID OGO/NGO/ST01.blob.call.window.net/ your container. And then you can say that you only want this REST type to be a container, so it only display container object in there as well. You can do the same thing with Blob, and you can see the components will be metadata. And then you can also use the same REST API to be able to set properties from a container and a Blob level as well. So this is pretty much the same thing. The only thing that needs to change is the HTTP protocol that you're using. You can see for getting, you use the gets, and for modifying and changing properties on the container level, you would basically use the put operations to be able to do that as well. So I expect to see more details on that in the video. And in the video, I would essentially show you guys how you can build a small little console application, and if time allows, maybe a Windows application that allows you to be able to upload object to the cloud as well. All right, so technically, this is the end of the module for today. We will continue. I will speak to Sharon, and then maybe Sharon can set up something for tomorrow. I'm just not sure how many people are in the group today. Okay, I see there's 8 of you guys. But I'll set up something for tomorrow for 1 o'clock, and then share that link on the group as well. And tomorrow we can basically look at the CouchDB option. So you can see how you can build out applications that uses some kind of document database in the cloud. In this case, this is going to be a Cosmos DB, which is very similar to things like MongoDB and so on, if you've ever built any applications with those before. Any questions? Any questions?
Yeah, that is what I just want to ask something.
All right, so M. Moeng, I think you should go first, and then next Akani.
Okay, sir, thank you. Sir, can you please share those slides? Because some of us, we are a little bit behind trying to catch up.
What do you want me to share?
At the slides.
These slides.
Yeah, if there's no problem.
No, unfortunately, we cannot. So Microsoft doesn't allow us to share the slides. But I have shared the manual, which also contains all the information on the slides. I'm not sure if you have access to it.
Yeah. I have the manual.
Yeah, so I mean, just use